7:01 p.m. on the East Coast, February 7th, Tuesday evening. Welcome to Community Conversations. My name is Ethan. So good to have you. As always, we like to give a few minutes for people to come in, get situated, find out that we're live. So we'll go a few minutes and let people. Hey, Duluth, good to see you. Hey, Matt, Carol. Yes, another Tuesday edition indeed. Hey, Valencia, how are you? And hi, Jenna. So while we let people in, I think we talked about it last time. Hi, Katie. I think the question today is your favorite Disney character. Who's your favorite Disney character? Katie and I put up all the pins that we bought at Disney and started collecting. And so first time I've been early. Me too, Chad. I'm like always a minute late. Yeah. I was gonna do Disney. Kayla, I'm sorry I beat you to it. I just saw your comment. Feel free to put it in the comment. I'm definitely open to another question for sure. Or if you want to save it for next Tuesday, whatever's best for whatever you prefer. I can definitely defer to you a week from Tuesday in 2 weeks, and you can ask the question. We have Minnie, we have Cinderella, we have Eeyore. Hey, Dr. Aurelius, how are you? Tiana. So if you're just joining us, we'll start in another minute. People are getting settled. Say hi. Let us know you're here, where you're from, and your favorite Disney character. Hey, Eric. Of course, Jack counts. Yeah, for sure. I have a good Jack Skellington story from our trip to Disney. Cool, Kayla. But I got you. Like next, I will wait till you pop on, or if you want to email me, we'll go with your question in 2 weeks. If we're doing technically Disney, I'm going to say Louise Belcher from Bob's Burgers since they own Fox. That's tricky, Chad. Yes, technically that is a Disney character. Well done, Chad. Well done. Jack Sparrow. I like that. Again, if you're just joining us, feel free to say hi in the chat, where you're from. The current question going on is, what is your favorite Disney character? Got lots to talk about today. Lots has happened since last we spoke. And so let's get the housekeeping out of the way, and then we'll get into some conversation. So if you don't know me, my name is Ethan. I'm a national advocate for the International OCD Foundation. This is Community Conversations. It's intended to serve as educational content and is not intended to replace therapy. I'm not a therapist. For treatment-related questions, please be sure to work with your local provider or contact a local clinician. The International OCD Foundation is not a crisis hotline. If you're in crisis or you're ever feeling suicidal or unsafe, please go to your local emergency room or call 911 or the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline by dialing 988. We want to create a safe space and be kind and respectful to everyone. At the end of the day, we're here to support one another. As you know, I'm very big into supporting one another. There's something else to say on that note. And this is being broadcast on several social media platforms, so keep that in mind as you speak about your personal experiences with OCD. So with all of that, what's up? Welcome, family, IOCDF, OCD fam, what's up? It's been a couple weeks, although we did a town hall last week that was really good on ERP. And yeah, Eric just wrote, Nightmare merchandise was everywhere when we went to Disneyland Paris. It's very popular in Europe. Interesting. Katie and I were just talking about Disneyland Paris. So I'll have to tell you, Eric, about our Jack Skellington story. So with an artist it was kind of cool. So first of all, always, how are you all doing? Let's start there. You know, what happens is we get warmed up and questions start coming in. What's going on in your life, Toulouse? Questions come in, but we're already mid-talking, and then I don't get to finish them all. So I was thinking about, do I wait for questions and we just get rolling? Or I'm glad things are going well, or should I just start talking? I know there's lots of things in the news, current events. I'm trying to think. I know when we spoke last, Katie was getting over COVID, and I spoke about my own sort of OCD that had really kicked up during that time, which is understandable. Moving to Kansas for basketball training. Wow. Do you play basketball, Duluth, or do you coach? Excuse me. So I know I spoke very open and candid about that experience. As I also said, that might happen is once things sort of slowly return to normal. I had a feeling that my OCD would return to what I call baseline, and indeed it did. And so there you go, Kansas City in the house. Deleuze is going to Kansas. Deleuze, meet Holly. Holly, that's awesome. You're a basketball player. That's fantastic. I'm 5'6". I always wanted to be a basketball player, and my parents said I could do anything. And I mean, I realized there's like 3 players that are like 5'2", whatever. Anyway, it was never going to happen for me. Katie's feeling much better. Thanks for asking, Matt. But anyway, so yeah, the OCD definitely kind of subsided and settled down, as it always does when it's blips and gets loud and annoying, and you can become aware of it, and with the obsessions dying down, the compulsions did as well, and we're kind of back to where we were before. And that's awesome. Deleuze wrote, "My OCD baseline is decreasing with meditation." Yeah, I wish I should meditate more. I try to do it once a day, but I would be curious, Deleuze, to hear what kind of meditation you're doing, and how you're employing it in your life. 5'9" without shoes. I'm so kind of hard, but I'm willing to give it a chance and maintain that. Absolutely, that's awesome. That's awesome. Jess wrote, "I'm from Montana." Welcome, Jess. Just had my first appointment with a therapist who specializes in OCD, nervous but excited. I love that, Jess. So I'm hoping, Jess, that you respond in a specific way, which is hopefully they do exposure and response prevention. That is the gold standard treatment, and that's the first thing we want to hear when we talk to an OCD specialist that specializes in OCD, cognitive behavioral therapy, but specifically ERP, at least to start. So yes, good, perfect. I was scared I was going to deflate you if you were like, no, they're doing this other thing. So that's super exciting, and I can definitely relate to, like, I think nervous but excited is the right. Well, all your feelings are right, but I think that it is so valid to feel nervous because of starting treatment and what it means, and in facing your fears, and not compulsing, and what that in that whole experience, but excited because it's the first step in regaining the life that you deserve and want and desire and dream. So I think excited, but nervous but excited is the perfect way to explain it. And you'll have to keep us updated, but crazy proud of you. I think that's awesome, and you'll crush it. You'll crush it. All right. So hi, Dragrafix. I feel like that's short for something that I should know. Anyway, real quick, and then I want to jump into questions. So feel free to load in. I can talk a little bit about some things that are going on, but honestly, I'm proud to say it was a fairly uneventful couple of weeks. Some life stuff got in the way. Feelings, emotions, not OCD related, but that doesn't mean that life can't be hard. And sometimes when things slow down over the weekends, noise can kick up, and it can be tricky. So it wasn't specifically OCD, but I think that sometimes just life can be challenging, and that's okay. That's when you're living. So I always can appreciate, to some extent, challenging. Chris, I'll answer your question in one sec. Blue said, "I usually meditate by gathering my attention with an anchor and then just letting the life live through me without judgment. Sometimes I do some more focused meditations on compassion, gratitude, etc. Meditate for 3 hours a day, but probably going to decrease once I move." That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I wish you the best of luck with your meditation practice. We always say, obviously, as a treatment for OCD, things like meditation, they're not a treatment, but when you can add healthy coping mechanisms and tools and skills to your repertoire, not to get rid of the feelings, right, but to help live in the present moment with whatever you're feeling and whatever you're experiencing at that time, as meditation teaches you to do. Living a holistic, treating the body and mind holistically in addition to ERP is really, really helpful. And that's where things like meditation come in really handy. Sleep, eating well, exercise, all of those things. At 7 to 9 p.m., Chris asked, "How do you do ERP for fear of fear?" Great question. So, much like anything else, if your fear is of fear, then the exposure would be willing to sit with the possibility that you might become afraid and then not try to push it away. So OCD can get really tricky, and that it starts to, oh gosh, what if I have fear? And that's very common, by the way. Fear of anxiety is fear. Anxiety is fear, fear of the past, fear of the future, fear of the unknown. So, if you're afraid of being afraid or feeling fear, then the ERP would be to do things that make you feel that fear, and then not engage in a behavior that makes you feel better. And not a clinician, not suggesting that you do that, but at the end of the day, it's about embracing the idea that you might be fearful, acknowledging that it is a part of OCD, but it's also a part of life, whatever that fear is. It's varying degrees of fear, and then being willing to let fear happen, and not trying to guard against fear not happening. Right. So we can replace that second fear, we could replace with literally any other subtype or symptom of OCD: fear of germs, fear of accidentally harming myself or a loved one, fear of going to hell, right? What if I'm afraid of that thing? So, and it's the same treatment for all of those things, which is, living with the uncertainty that you might be one of those, or have fear in your life. And then, being able to sit with the discomfort of what fear may bring you. So, good question, though, for sure. I saw my comments rolled up on purpose. That was annoying. Matt B wrote, the town hall last week was with ERP was very enlightened and has helped me greatly with doing ERP in a different mindset of leaning in the uncertainty, sitting with the discomfort, but enjoying life again. Oh man, that's so awesome, Matt. I love hearing that. That's why we do what we do and have those conversations. And it's so important to recognize and realize that we're not failing the treatment. I think that the treatment of ERP and other modalities of treatment, it's all nuanced based. And yes, ERP can treat any subtype or symptom, but we definitely have to be in the right place to do it. And we need support with that. And I think that really, really good clinicians will determine where you are, what you're ready to do, how you're ready to approach, and then engage accordingly and give you the right insight to help you participate as a willing participant in ERP in a meaningful way. And it's harder for some and not as hard for others, and that's okay. So is everything else in life. But that is really just the crux of ERP, which is leaning into the uncertainty, sitting with the discomfort, but enjoying life again, right? And that's the fact that you're experiencing joy, while you're doing that is phenomenal, and will continue to grow and be exponential. So I'm glad if some of what we said put a little bit of a different slant on it for you. The tricky thing about ERP is that, if you're not fully surrendering to the process, if you're not completely giving in to the uncertainty and being willing for that fear to happen or exist, and if you're not fully embracing the discomfort with attitude, as Reed Wilson says, then ERP won't work. And that's where you hear people doing ERP. I've done it for 15 years. It didn't work, or it didn't work for me. But it's not the fault of the patient. It's not our fault. And that's such an important point to hit home, is whether it's a medication, whether it's a therapy treatment, whatever it is, if you didn't have the result that you wanted, it's not our fault. More research needs to happen. People need to approach things differently. We are merely the people that have the disorder, and it is up to the experts to come up with ways to treat us. And we will be happy to participate in that treatment. But, a scientist told me a couple years ago, I've repeated it since, that, I was interviewing this individual who's a pretty, he's well established in various fields. And, he said, you're not failing yourself or OCD. Science is failing you. We have to get better at research and come up with options to, and that's so true. Like, if we think of another disorder or disease, and that disease that people are dying from, ALS, or aggressive forms of MS or muscular dystrophy or neuromuscular conditions, right? It's like they're not failing treatment, treatment's failing them, right? So we really have to look at what options are available to us and how to approach those. And ERP is the first line gold standard of treatment, and it works for a large percentage of people. But if it doesn't, that doesn't necessarily mean that ERP won't work again, approached in a different way, or that there's other modalities that will work, right? But I think it's important that we don't stigmatize ourselves when we hit challenges in our own treatment, because it's really hard to come back from that. So there's no reason to, like, I can't say that enough, that we definitely have to be willing to recognize that it's not me, it's you. It's like breaking up, right? Jess asked, do you have any recommendations for support groups for loved ones, hoping to find one for my partner? Yeah, that's great. I think we have a list of support groups on the IOCDF website. And Fran, when you get a chance, if you wouldn't mind putting a link to that in the comment thread, Jess, hopefully you'll be, and you can also visit the IOCDF website. Offhand, I don't know. I know there are, and I know Chris Tronston, fellow lead advocate, and his mom run a family support group out of OCD SoCal that anyone can join. I don't know if Katie's still on, if she has any thoughts on this, or if anybody else has. Obviously, please feel free to put it in the chat thread. But offhand, I don't know. But if you don't get the answers you're looking for tonight, I'll give out my email at the end as always, and I'll do some quick research and grab some options for you, Jess, and email you back with some. So sorry, I don't have any right off the top of my head. Of course, Fran already did everything that I asked him to do, because he's the GOAT, really. It's just all there is to it. Two Bros at 7:30 p.m. said, have you ever felt numb? No emotions. I used to be so anxious and did many compulsions. Now I can't even think straight. Definitely. I think there's various reasons for this. I know for myself, and it looks like, hey, Uma, so glad you're here. I think people are already saying, you're definitely not alone in that. I think that, for me, numbness came with medication. And I also think it was the way my brain guarded myself, because the more blank and numb I got, the less, it was just a self-defense mechanism. But in that, of course, you lose yourself in that. And so you're definitely not alone in that. It's partly self-defense mechanism, partly if you're medicated. And either way, it's not fun at all. And you just acknowledging, that you're feeling that way, is acknowledging that you have insight that you're feeling that way and you don't want to feel that way. So the answer is yes, absolutely. Treatment is really effective and helpful for that. And when you don't have the skills and tools and you don't know what's going on, it's a really easy sort of self-defense mechanism for the brain to engage and protect us from the onslaught of what we're experiencing and feeling. So yeah, when I was at my worst, and even when I was in treatment in the beginning and struggling, like, when they were like, what are you passionate about? I'm like, nothing. I don't think I even raised my eyebrows, like, nothing. I'm not passionate about anything. I don't feel anything. I don't care. I was, as you described it, I had no emotions. I had no feelings about anything. I was really just indifferent to everything. And it took some time to find myself again, but treatment definitely helped with that. And I see down below you wrote, you're considering going to a treatment center. And there's some really great recommendations on the IOCDF website as to options for you, but you're not alone in that at all. And I totally get it. I'm sure a lot of folks here do as well. So thanks for the question, Two Bros. I appreciate it. Let's see here. Oh, Amy, I'm so glad you enjoyed the town hall. SP at 715 wrote, hey, Ethan, thanks for your time after doing an exposure. Have you felt lots of regret about having done it for a long time? Even any tips on working through this? That's a great question. Yes. And I don't know that I've ever been asked that question. And I'm wondering if what I'm about to, how I'm about to answer is what you mean, SP. Um, you know, I felt regret in the sense that I was pissed I triggered myself. And I think that's what you're referring to. Um, uh, and I'm going to give you a second to maybe respond down below and let me know, as opposed to, you were forced to do something that you regretted doing, from some other standpoint, and that's a whole nother conversation. But for me, um, I know that when I engaged in ERPs and then I was triggered for sometimes days and weeks because of what I was exposing myself to, um, I was really, really regretful that I did that. Um, just because I was pissed that I was as triggered as I was and anxious, and didn't want to feel what I was feeling. Um, so I'm curious if that's what you mean, or you mean that you did something that you felt, um, was against, your morality or something like that. In which case, there's a different answer to that question. But I want to give you a second to weigh in and give me thoughts if you're still here. Uh, Yeah, and Deleuze is commenting too, but I think I touched on what you're talking about, and if I did, no, you're definitely not alone, and I think that, but the reality of it is at least if I'm answering this correctly, and I'm just gonna have to live with the doubt that I may not be. um, when you piss off your OCD, it's just another opportunity to fight it. And so, when you're frustrated and angry that you've done this exposure that has really triggered you, let's reframe that as a really incredible opportunity to put OCD in its place, right? Because you can't fight it and let it's close. Just like boxing, you can't knock out your opponent unless your opponent is close to you, right? You're gonna get some punches too. And OCD is the exact same way. So that's the goal of therapy, is to get OCD to come out and get in your face, so you have an opportunity to respond to it in a way that knocks it out. And so, but I mean, there were so many situations where I was crippled after exposures, and so pissed that I even entertained the idea, just because the anxiety afterwards was so, intense. So yeah, I definitely had that, and hopefully that reframe, was a helpful tip. I mean, other tips is understanding why you're doing it, and also that we have a choice on how we respond. So, thinking about how you're feeling, thinking about how you're responding to your feeling, and recognizing, man, I feel so shitty, and I wish I didn't feel this bad right now, but I know that this is a path toward freedom from OCD. I know that this is a path toward reclaiming my life. And so, you know what? Instead of regretting it, I'm going to say I'm a badass for doing it. I'm going to call myself a fierce OCD warrior badass. And now I'm going to make the most of the situation that I've created by not compulsing, resisting compulsions, and continue to knock OCD back until it's quieter and it's quieter. So, that would be the mind frame and the tips that I would suggest to work on as you engage in this. And when you really catch yourself being really freaked out, again, that's a killer opportunity to really work on things. So that, hopefully that's helpful, SP. Um, Duluth at 7:16 p.m. asks, Ethan, do you think people should be 100% responsible regardless of treatment emotions? I think the concept of having 100% responsibility and thus control over your recovery is empowering and helps. Let me read this just to make sure I understand what you're asking. Regardless of, do you think people should be 100% responsible regardless of treatment emotions? Define treatment emotions. I think the concept of having 100% responsibility and thus control over your own recovery is empowering and helps. You know, so there's two sides to this, and I talk about it in my keynote too. We're 100% in charge of our own recovery, 100%, and we're 100% in control of our relapse and relapse prevention, right? So broken down simply, and I'll keep an eye at the bottom if you meant something different to lose. Um, I think that I think that we have to recognize that number one, thoughts are involuntary, so we can help focus them, but still, if we check in with our mind right now, there's going to be random things floating through there that we're not in control of, right? And our feelings, we can't help how we feel, right? But we can control our focus and our behavior. And once we learn that fact and then learn how to do that, it does become our responsibility to react and act and focus in a certain way. Um, that is not to say that you're failing treatment or you're not doing it right if you make choices that don't align with the treatment, right? I talked about 2 weeks ago, I was mired in obsessions and compulsions, right? But I was still making choices. Like I'm still responsible for those things. But I can also give myself compassion because I have a disorder and I have a disease called OCD. And so, yes, while I have a choice, those choices can be harder and harder to not make because the OCD can get louder and louder. So, what does all that mean? I'm kind of skipping ahead. So the short of it is yes, compulsing is a choice. It doesn't feel like a choice in the beginning. It doesn't feel like a choice when you haven't had therapy. And it feels like you don't have a choice. This is something I have to do. As you start to engage in therapy and treatment, suddenly as you diffuse with the thought, you realize that it's not an I can't help it, it's that and I won't. It is a choice. It is indeed a choice. And when you recognize it as a choice, you start to determine, why am I making this choice to choose to compulse or choose to live a value-driven life? And you start dissecting what that means. You hit that fork in the road when you're triggered and what you're choosing. And the more you choose to sit with the discomfort and live a value-driven life and accept the uncertainty and the possibility that whatever it is may happen, things start to get quieter, right? And so because compulsing and our focus and our behavior is our own choice, we are technically 100%, I believe, we're 100% responsible. But, I think control is an interesting word. We are in control of our own recovery, but just because these are choices doesn't mean that we are supposed to be perfect, right? It doesn't mean that we're supposed to lead a perfect life where we make perfect decisions and we never compulse. And if I did compulse because it was a choice, then I'm a piece of shit and I'm a failure, right? So it's gray. It's not black or white like the disorder. Similar to lots of things in life are choices. And I'm sure we've all made great choices and we've all made terrible choices about some things, right? That had nothing to do with OCD. And we had the knowledge, we had the information, we had all the facts, but we still didn't make the right choice. Does that mean we're a bad person? Does that mean no, it doesn't. That means we're human. We're fallible, right? So I think it's the same. I think, and to Deluse's point, I think the empowerment piece of that is the fact that we have a choice and we're in control of, I was just reading back to Deleuze to see if any clarification. So think about this. This is powerful, and this touches on what Deleuze is. I was talking to a friend a couple months ago, and I was thinking, like, if you have diabetes or cancer, that's not in or any other physical disorder, and it flares up, right? Then, or you run into a problem, then what do you have to do? Well, you have to go to the doctor. You have to call your specialist. You need to tweak your meds. You need to possibly get a new type of treatment or therapy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. How powerful is the fact that if your OCD ticks up, and I'm not saying this is not a broad statement across the board. I'm not making a generalization. Like there's times you might need different medication, whatever. But think about this. If your OCD ticks up, you have the power in your own brain to address it. So when you have a flare up, you literally, if you have had the treatment, and this is where we try so hard to make treatment accessible and affordable to everyone. But if you have the skills and tools and you've gone through ERP and other treatment modalities, you can literally right then and there put into place what you need to put OCD back to bed. I think that's freaking amazing. I think that out of every disease and disorder, it's like you have the power within your own brain to put the flare up back in its place. And I think that's very empowering. I think that's incredibly empowering. Now, that doesn't mean you don't need support. I'm not sitting here saying you should have no problem doing it on your own. It's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying that at the heart of it, it all starts with the ability to embrace uncertainty and start to walk along that road. And I think that's super foul and super powerful and super empowering. The other thing that Deleuze touched on that I found really, really helpful in my own recovery is when OCD got really loud after I got better 8 months later, I thought I was going to relapse. And I was, reminded by a therapist. I was transitioning from my treatment team in Boston in 2011, I think, to my therapist, who I'm still with today. And I thought I was relapsing. And he said basically what I just said to you, which was, Ethan, what do you have control over? Do you have control over your thoughts? No. Do you have control over your feelings? No. What do you have control? Oh, I have control over my focus and behavior. Wait, so whether I compulse is my choice. And the only way I'm going to relapse is if I engage in compulsions over and over and over and over again. Now, that might still happen. It could still happen to me. I don't know. But it felt so empowering to realize that relapse prevention was literally in my own hands. I had to choose multiple times over to throw away everything that I'd learned and to engage in rituals and compulsions. And by doing that, I would systematically backslide and inevitably relapse. And I found a lot of comfort in that. I found a lot of comfort in that understanding that it would take choices that were in my control to make me sick, right? And if you've had a relapse, this isn't commentary on your weak or you made bad decisions or anything, because you have OCD and I've regressed at times too. And I talked about it 2 weeks ago, right? Simply acknowledging, though, that what a powerful statement to understand that because it's decision and choice based, at a certain point, once you've had treatment and therapy, that you can control relapse and you can prevent it by making healthy, effective choices. That's not to say sometimes OCD gets so loud, it's really hard to do. And you might slide back, and that is not anything to blame or beat yourself up over, to stigmatize yourself for, because it's a brain disorder and it can get super tricky and super scary and super convincing. But I think at the kernel of it is this idea of that as cheesy as this is, it's true, though, the power is within us, right? We have the power once we are equipped with the knowledge, the information, the exercises, the skills, the tools, etc. Great question. Clearly that got me on a rant for 10 minutes, but hopefully that was helpful. Matt B wrote, exactly, Ethan, I'm currently on Zoloft too. That's really helped me with ERP. Also, as Ms. McInville says, they go hand in hand. Take ERP at your own stride. It took me 6 months to get to this point. That was at 7:18 p.m. But you are at this point. It's a marathon, not a sprint. You make investments every day, and we never minimize the little wins, because little wins in this area are huge wins every time. So keep that in mind. I'm really thirsty today. I don't know why. Hydrate, very important. I'm not sure that it helps OCD, but hydrate anyway. Amy Lynch at 7:19 p.m. asked, college-age son is on a high dose of fluoxamine, which takes edge off his OCD, but refuses to go to ERP therapy. Advice for us as his parents. Great question. After 6, it's just words are difficult. So I'll preface by saying, not a therapist. This is just from my own experience and listening to a lot of therapists. The first thing you can do, and a lot of parents don't realize this, is you can go see a therapist that specializes in OCD to help you navigate how to navigate your son, right? It's great that they're on treatment, but it is a combination. Most of the time, it's a combination of medication and treatment, and it sounds like you know that. So the first step I would suggest is there a provider that you could see to help you navigate? Now, I don't know your son's exact situation or your family situation. What I can tell you, and this is just an example, I'm not telling you what to do. But for instance, systematic pressure onto an adult child is really effective to help motivate them to get them to treatment. So for instance, Again, I don't know your situation, but I'll make some assumptions. Your son's in college. Are they paying for their own college? Do they have a cell phone? Do they pay for that, or do you pay for that? Do they eat food? I would imagine they do. And if they do, are you paying for that, or are they paying for that? Right? Do they live in an apartment or a dorm? Who's paying for that? Right? So they're living an adult life, and what happens is a lot of times adult children, and I was one of them, and this was my situation, can indulge their OCD to a certain extent because everything is taken care of around them, right? So they have time to indulge it because they don't have to worry about how to pay for their cell phone or how to pay for their food or how to pay for their whatever it is, right? Now you may chime in and say he pays for everything, and which it's a different conversation. But a lot of times, under the guidance of a clinician, there can be systematic approaches to start not reassuring, not enabling, not engaging your son's OCD. And by not doing that, also start to apply pressure in areas where, phone, food, whatever it is, where they realize that, oh shit, I don't do, I don't know why I'm cursing tonight. I never curse on these. Sorry. If I don't do treatment, maybe things are going to get shut off for me. Or they recognize that life is a lot harder because of their impairment from their OCD and without mom and dad's help or mom's help, right? And so there are a lot of approaches to take. Also, identifying, if your son is really enjoying school, but it's obviously really impaired by the OCD, making recognitions along those lines of like what he's actually losing from his college experience by engaging in OCD and his compulsions and things like that. So, I always say take the guesswork out of it for parents, because parents will always try to guess. Your role is to parenting is completely counterintuitive to OCD. You want to make sure your son doesn't hurt, doesn't feel pain, is happy, healthy, all of those things. OCD loves that. OCD loves is like, yep, give me everything, make sure I'm taken care of. I will flourish and grow, right? And so really the guidance from a clinician is invaluable in that situation, where they can look at the case, break it down for you, say, here are areas you might not know that you're really enabling and reassuring your son and his OCD, and where you can pull back and learn how to talk to him in a way that comes from love. It always comes from love, but doesn't help his OCD. It helps your son, right? And then also look at places to apply pressure that may motivate him to engage in treatment. I just saw your comment, Amy. We pay for most. Yeah. So what I just said, I would definitely engage a treatment provider and start thinking and start looking. I really feel, you're welcome, Amy. I really feel for parents. Obviously, my parents went through it with me. There's a lot of guesswork involved, and I really my goal is to direct folks and parents and things like that and people to resources where they don't have to guess, because there is an approach and a plan and a treatment to this. And if we can take the guesswork out and give you a roadmap on how to navigate, and especially adult children, because that's challenging for sure. They're adults, they can do what they want. So hopefully that was helpful. And if you need resources, obviously you can visit the IOCDF website. And again, I will give out my email at the end of the stream, and always happy to answer questions as well. Matt B wrote, shout out to at Katie O'Dunn for brilliantly advocating about the stigma around OCD with the bogus New York Post. What's your take on this? I had a feeling this would come up. So 7:21 p.m. Fran. So as we know, and I talk about stigma and the media all the time, being in the media. So as we know, oftentimes the media completely misunderstands OCD, miscategorizes it. It's misused. The term is misused all the time, and all of the above. That was sort of taken to another level in a recent article that could be really triggering. And so this was an article that came out, and I'll just be honest with y'all, because the article, let me preface by saying it's complete bullshit. And I will curse and say that is absolute, complete trash, tabloid. Like, what was this dude thinking? And the people he cited aren't really it's a mess. It's an absolute piece of garbage. But it doesn't mean that people don't read it. And this is where this stuff becomes very harmful. If you're here, we can talk about it and we can dissect it and process it and say, It's a tabloid magazine. Here's the evidence. There's no evidence of this whatsoever. It's a ridiculous opinion piece. But if you are somebody that's struggling in the midst of, really bad OCD, and you read this article, and you don't know, it could be really, really damaging, really dangerous. So in essence, this idiot makes a claim correlating that OCD could potentially lead to terrorism. And there's all these citations by this NYU teacher who, if you actually look at his profile, he's an NYU Abu Dhabi teacher. So it's like a remote campus in Saudi Arabia or wherever. Abu Dhabi, I don't want to sound tone deaf to that, but nothing against Abu Dhabi, but like he's not at NYU and New York is the point. So it basically dissects this idea that obsession is tied to OCD, which is then tied to fanaticism and what word am I thinking? Extremist behavior and eventually terrorism. So yeah, opening up the internet and seeing that like, oh, OCD people are terrorists is like completely mind-boggling. So my take on that is we have to do better, right? People can post whatever they want. The problem is that the media that has the most eyeballs are the least informed. So, we can post stuff in the scientific journal, but guess what? 50 million people on the internet aren't reading it. They're reading the New York Post or whatever comes up first in a Google search, right? And so we have to get ahead of this. I'm so passionate about this. We have to get ahead of this. We have to get ahead of the narrative. I think this community has been insanely amazing at responding to this. The author made his Twitter private because he was getting bombarded with messages. I mean, we have just such an incredible, passionate army of advocates out there that the minute there's something that's taken out of place or misspoken about OCD, I mean, y'all are just on top of it, and it is amazing. But we have to do a better job of making sure that these outlets and media companies that are popular, right, that have the eyeballs on them, have the right information. Look, there's always going to be clickbait. That's what this is. People want click. They wanted arguments and conversation, but not at the risk of people's lives. I mean, like, seriously, have some responsibility, some morality. Don't be a piece of shit journalist. And you can quote me on that. People's lives are at stake. And, Katie said it best herself to me, which really hit home for me when she was talking about this. And she's like, there was a time not so long ago when if I'd read that article, when I was really worried about me harming someone with my OCD, that, if I'd read that in the place I was in, it may not have turned out so well. And that really hit home for me because I personally don't have the subtype around harm around others. And so, yeah, it really got me frustrated, but it's a symptom of the bigger problem. And the question is, how do you approach the bigger problem? The IOCDF is working tirelessly. We as advocates are working tirelessly I literally, last month, I think I did 50 interviews with TV stations and radio stations on OCD and debunking what it is and stigma and things like that. So we're doing a lot, but we need to do more. And we need people that have eyeballs on them talking about OCD in meaningful and effective ways. Because can't stand for that. So yeah, Katie, along with amazing other advocates and clinicians, there are literally hundreds of Instagram posts and videos defending our community and speaking out against. And I know the IOCDF is putting out a statement to the New York Post about their thing as well. So steps are being taken, but that's my take on it. In essence, is that people need to have accountability, and it's shitty, and I have a real problem with I have a real problem with the clickbait and all that stuff, because not everybody is in our position where we can recognize that it's BS. Just like people who print, celery juice is the cure, or that OCD is a superpower. I will tell you that when I was listen, if you don't know my story, and some pieces I don't go into it. When I was really suffering and struggling before I found treatment, before I found the right treatment, I should say, and after going to 10 talk therapists, I was so frustrated by not being able to find treatment. I went to hypnotherapist. I went to a past life regressionist. I went to a Reiki expert. I went to an energy healer. I went to a woman that like muscle tested and like removed corrections by praying over me. And like I was in, these weren't funny to me. I was so desperate to get help. And like this started when I was 14 and now I'm 30. I mean, over the course of like ages 25 to 31, like trying to take matters in my own hand because every therapist that I went to that was actually a PhD didn't know how to treat me. They said they did, but they didn't, And so it's like, we have to look out for those folks. I mean, we have to look out for all of us, but we have to protect those folks because they're all just Ethans, like wanting to not feel what they feel, not suffer, and looking for answers. And the answer isn't in celery juice, at least right now. And the answer isn't in a New York Post article either. And so, yeah, get me started talking about this. I'm not an aggressive person, but I will get aggressive on this topic. So anyway, with that, Matt, I appreciate you bringing it up. And I haven't scrolled down yet, but I'm sure if other people have thoughts, please weigh in for sure. And thank you, Fran, for posting my keynote. Eileen wrote, "My name is Joe. I'm going by mom's name." Fair. My OCD makes me mumble stuff and blurt stuff out. Have you seen people with OCD do that? Or do you think that's a symptom of Tourette's? It's a great question, Joe. Tourette's and Tourettic tics and verbalizations are definitely a very common comorbidity or related disorder associated with OCD. Unfortunately, like I'm not a clinician, and also my expertise in OCD doesn't really center around the Tourettic aspect of it. Like there's obsessive skin picking or hair pulling, blinking or staring, and also what you're describing as well. And so I've definitely seen people with OCD do that 100%. You're definitely not alone. I don't know whether that's a symptom of the Tourette's, the OCD, or there's something else, and you would need to see a clinician to get properly diagnosed for that. But in terms of like what I've seen, at least within the OCD community, yes, I've seen lots of that. And from what I understand, obviously it's very treatable. And so, if you're not exactly sure what's going on, try to reach out if you can to a clinician in your area, see if you can get a diagnosis as to what's going on and start treatment. But you're definitely not alone there, Joe. So thank you for asking that question and being willing to ask that. Appreciate you. I'm just reading through your comments. Thank you for everything. I appreciate everything that you asked for. Deleuze asks at 7:30 p.m. Also, Ethan, do you see the intrusive thoughts TikTok trend, and do you think we should be more compassionate towards people who may spreading information? I think boundary setting and compassion. So I just learned about this trend in the last few days from Katie. I'm 12 years older than her. I just started reading newspapers from like stone rocks and hieroglyphics. And I have a phone. I don't know. But I just heard about this trend and we actually talked about it in our meeting. So I will say that it's really disturbing and I don't get it, but maybe I'm just too old to not get it. I don't get the trend. For me, though, I will say that I don't think my strategy or approach to advocacy changes in this context, right? I like to call it like compassionate education, right? It's not malicious. I don't think the trend and the hashtags and the people that are doing this actually no, OCD is a really debilitating disorder that affects 3 million people in the US. I'm going to go ahead and say things that are super stigmatized. I don't think that's happening here, right? I think these kiddos don't know what they're talking about and how problematic it is what they're doing and how it can impact the community. So I would approach, at least in the beginning, through, again, compassion education of saying, hey, listen, I know you're doing this. I know it's fun. I know you mean well, but actually what you're doing is causing this for this reason. Here's some information on OCD. Just FYI, it can be really offensive that you do that. And so I know you don't know, and just start there. So yeah, I mean, boundary setting and compassion. And I've had that conversation numerous times with people. And I always want to come from a place of education, but compassion, because 99.9% of people just don't know. They're not being malicious. They just don't know. And every once in a while, you run into that person, like that coach from a couple years ago, that doesn't want to hear it and wants to spout his BS, and and is just trying to be an ass and get clicks and likes and all that other stuff. But aside from the occasional few, most people really do mean well, don't want to inflict harm on anyone, and just don't know. So yeah, great question. Great. I love all the support and advocacy in the thread. You guys are fantastic. Um, I'm just scrolling down, getting to all your comments. Um, I see Erica at 7:38 p.m. Not really a question, but having OCD and PTSD had a major trigger for my PTSD on Sunday, and the what ifs are super strong. Moving on and looking forward to the rest of the week. That's fantastic. So I have PTSD and OCD, and any stress can bring on OCD, and PTSD is obviously no different. And their OCD and trauma are two very different things. They have to be treated differently, but it doesn't mean that one doesn't play and compound the other, right? And so I'm sorry for the trigger. I think though that your mindset and just what you've written is really excellent. And recognizing, having the insight and objectivity to go, hey, my OCD is really ticked up, but I know why. And I'm just going to move on through the week and let that be there. That's what I take from your statement. And I think that is a beautiful approach. So thank you for sharing that, Eric. I appreciate it. Michael at 7:42 p.m. asks, I'm a psychologist and fellow OCD sufferer who just wrote a Psychology Today blog that looks at some of the creative skills of those with OCD and how we can use that to flip the script on OCD. I'd be curious if you have found ways of tapping into your creativity and using it to flip OCD. Hey, Michael. So I've actually read your article, and I think you also wrote the superhero article as well. I actually, this is great that you're here. Welcome. I honestly wish we had more time, because maybe we can connect on email and discuss and talk. I definitely have lots of thoughts. I think the approach is a better, my personal opinion is definitely a healthier approach to it, as a creative, right? So first of all, you cite Dr. Grayson a lot in it, and I've actually said the same things, right? And this is fact. This is research based, that individuals with OCD have above average intelligence, above average creativity, and a vivid imagination, right? We do. So we're just better than everybody else, basically. And I thought your article was really, really interesting. I used to say it's the gift, it's the curse, right? Oh my gosh, I have OCD, but also I'm able to do these things. I am a staunch believer and supporter that OCD in and of itself as a disorder and a disease is not a positive. I mean, there are silver linings. I've met amazing community. I am where I am because of my journey with OCD, but my journey, my struggle, and my work to overcome my struggle, and my creativity, the things that I've done in the field of film and television, and everything I've done is a product of me, Ethan, not the OCD. That's just my belief. But I am a human being, and I am a human being, and my brain is capable of certain things. And I know for me that we sorry, I'm reading comments and trying to focus. There's so much to talk about on this, Michael. Maybe I can have you on the next Just Ethan or community conversation. Yeah, I lost my train of thought. And actually I want to read what. So the first article, feel free to put your OCD as a superpower. Here's how to harness it and hear yourself. So, I agree. I think that OCD is a negative, going haywire to stuff. And I know you agree. Yeah, totally. Yes, let's do that next time and chat by email. I think that would be great. I think if you haven't read the article, I don't want to keep people lost. But the bottom line is, I think yes and no, right? And I think that on one hand, it's kind of an interesting philosophical debate because there isn't one person with OCD that I've met that isn't any of the things that we've described, that isn't brilliant, that isn't creative, that isn't amazing. So there's something to this idea of that level of brain, whatever that brain is more susceptible to an OCD diagnosis. I know for me, this is what I was going to say. I know for me that I always thought that when I was able to I believe that my creativity was tied to my OCD, and I was scared to get better. I know that I tapped into my pain when I was acting because I was always just hurting with my OCD. I'll give you the email at the end of the thing, Mike. Yeah, no problem. That sounds good. And I knew I was a good actor because I was always in pain. So I was able to take that pain and use it in my auditions. And I was really nervous to get better because I knew that the OCD was tied to creative. And in some ways, right, that's flipping it. Also, I was very, as many of us here are, we're very creative at getting out of stuff. We're very creative at manipulating and coming up with things to get out of things, to alleviate our anxiety, and still look like a good person about it, right? What I found when I got better was I was 1,000 times more creative. I was so much more prolific because my head was so free of all of the bombarding, intrusive thoughts. And also, I say now, I like to say, I use my manipulation for good, not evil. I use it in the service of doing meaningful things, and not in the service of tricking people into believing that I'm a great guy, even though I'm my OCD is keeping me from doing things. So I think it's a really interesting conversation to have, and the biology of the connection between creativity and OCD, the biology of the connection between intellect and OCD, and vivid imagination, all of those things. And so I think we're aligned. It sounds like, but I think it's important also to separate, the illness. So it's like tapping into who you are as an individual and using, and then it's almost like in sports. I'll jump to the next question, but we work really hard. A lot of athletes that we meet and talk to, they will at first credit their OCD. Well, I was, had to be in the gym. I was compulsive about working out. I was the best possible version of myself because I was there all the time, and but as we dig deeper, we actually discover how destructive their OCD was, how much joy it took away. They didn't want to be doing that. Even that behavior was ego dystonic, or against one's values. And so at the end of the day, the moral of that story is like, no, OCD doesn't make you a better athlete, right? So in this case, OCD doesn't make you a better artist or creative or whatever. But it is fascinating that individuals with OCD share so many of these characteristics. And also, there's nothing wrong with turning a negative into a positive at the end of the day. Like, I'm all about that too. So with all of that, I'm glad you're here, Michael. I look forward to future discussions. I mean, this is an open forum where, and I always tell people that are watching this, like, email me, questions, comments, agree, disagree. Like, we don't advance unless we talk, and so this is an open, safe space to share ideas, thoughts, unless it's the article that I talked about before, not your article, Michael. So I look forward to continued conversation about that. Thank you for being on here and sharing your insight and opinions. And I look forward to future. And if you haven't read Michael's article, I think the latest one is it the one you posted, Fran, or the latest one is I'll find it real quick. Or Michael, feel free to put your link in the chat. I was going to email you privately, but sure. There you go. So here's the flip the script on OCD. So this is, if you want to join us in 2 weeks, and I'm inviting everyone here, please give Michael's article a read, and let's have a open discussion about thoughts and feelings about it, and so forth. I think that'd be a really great discussion. Hi, Beth Carducci. Good to see you. Let me real quick just scan up and make sure I didn't miss anything. The post article's garbage. Agreed. Energy healers, yes, no problem. Thank you for giving us your time on that. Okay, this is all fantastic. You guys are awesome. All right, well, let's end on Deleuze wrote, not to say you must get in a difficult situation to develop those traits, but it helps guide you towards liberation. It's a powerful reframe, but OCD itself is not a blessing. What can come from it is. That's well said. Much more concise than what I said. And Katie wrote, it's 7:58 p.m. Sorry, Fran. I believe we can recognize OCD as awful and not helpful, but the treatment as a beautiful journey, as it took me more exciting places than I could have ever imagined. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we know the silver linings. We've been to the conferences. I met my fiance. So yeah, and I'll leave it on Eric Broach's. Sorry, Eric B. Did I just divulge? Anyway, 8:01 p.m. I think people who have OCD can be very imaginative. It's not really a feature of OCD, more like a prerequisite, and it doesn't go away when your OCD gets better. Yeah, beautifully said, Eric. With all of that, y'all are awesome. This was a great conversation. So thank you for contributing, for being here, for speaking your mind. If you're new, I hope you enjoyed it. Hi, love Lana. Yes, it's over. Of course, the recording is available. We miss you, and we hope you're doing well. So with that, I want to thank the IOCDF and thank Fran behind the scenes. OG is in the house tonight, producing and doing his thing. So always love when Fran is available and here. So tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific is a research roundtable with Dr. John Abramowitz and Kyle King. They'll be talking about relationship OCD with guest Dr. Guy Duran. So if you have relationship OCD or you have questions about it, this doesn't have to be a love relationship. It can be family relationships, friend relationships, whatever relationship it is. Feel free to jump on tomorrow. They'll be taking questions and comments, and should be a really interesting conversation. Also, you can register for the online hoarding disorder conference. This is a conference that offers an opportunity for professionals, therapists, to social workers, to firefighters, and other public safety officials to learn how to effectively and compassionately work with individuals with hoarding disorder. This will be March 4th and 5th, and you can register for it online. As always, this live stream is one of many, and you can see the entire schedule of future live streams at iocdf.org/peace of mind. You can also like and follow us on all social media so you get notified when we go live on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. There you go. Yes, we'll see you in 2 weeks. I'm not sure what's next Tuesday, but something good. Oh my God. Thank you, Eileen. Yes, personal email. So if you want to email me, I only give it out during this session. It is justethan@iocdf.org. I am the only one that answers this email. No one else sees it. And so please feel free. There it is. Thank you, Fran. So justethan@iocdf.org. Please feel free to email me. Give me a week or two to answer back because it tends to fill up really quickly, but I will always get back to you. Yes. Oh my gosh. And I will always get back to you. And so yes, Eileen, you can email me. Joe, sorry, you can email me about the group and any other questions that anybody has as well. Also, Michael and anyone else, please don't hesitate to email me there. Obviously, you can also contact the IOCDF at info@iocdf.org. And finally, I'm sleeping on the couch tonight because I forgot my fiance's live stream, who's on Tuesday next week, which is the Faith and OCD Roundtable. So if you're interested in hearing about religious scrupulosity and how faith and OCD intersect, you won't want to miss Katie's live stream. Woo, we're just a little scattered tonight. Thank you for being here. I hope you have a great week. Stay safe, stay vigilant, feel the feels, don't let OCD off the hook. And we will see you 2 weeks from tonight. Have a beautiful evening. Good night.